Happy Tuesday, everyone. Welcome back to A Thread of Hope. We are still in Numbers today, and we're going to talk about a couple of stories. But first, I want to just remind you that Numbers is teaching us that faith leads to a relationship with God through obedience and through faith and through trust. And I don't want to be redundant about this, but that's the whole reason God made us. He did not have to make us. He did not need us. He chose to have a relationship with us. He wanted us. And so he made mankind out of his own image. And we blew it. And that is when he started his amazing redemption plan that only God could come up with. No one would come up with something like this that would allow us to be back in that relationship with him, even though we blew it over and over and over. So all these stories within the story that we call the Bible are to bring us back to relationship with God through Jesus, which is why we're looking at him in the Old Testament. So today we're going to talk about Balaam. The Israelites are really close to the promised land. That is where both Joshua and Deuteronomy open at different points. And we're going to go to Balak, who was the king of Moab. And he had heard what happened with the Israelites and the Amorites. And he was scared. He was not liking that at all. So he sought out a man named Balaam. And Balaam is like a prophet for hire. He had a reputation for getting results when he spoke about something, cursing, blessing, whatever. So he sought him out, and it should be noted that Balaam practiced all kinds of sorcery, but he also listened to God. And he also sacrificed to God. So it's just kind of a huge, complex, he's very complex. Not an Israelite, I don't think. But certainly he practiced sorcery, which according to the law that they had just been given, that was, the answer to that was death. So Balak's men came to get Balaam, and Balaam said, well, I can't go till I talk to God and hear what he has to say, which I find amazing because he's a prophet for hire. But anyway, so he declined the invitation, and he declined the money because God said he couldn't curse the Israelites. But Balak was a persistent little thing, and so he went back to Balaam, and Balaam said, all right, I'll check with God again. And God said, okay, go. So God knew Balaam wasn't going for him or for Israel, but he also knew he could use him. And so that leads to this story that's kind of funny of Balaam and his donkey who starts talking to him. Now, the reason he starts talking to him is because Balaam's donkey sees the angel of the Lord, who most probably is Jesus. And he is fearful and trying to get away. And Balaam can't see at this point. So he's fighting with his donkey and not being very nice to his donkey. And then his donkey starts talking to him. And every time I hear this story, at this point, I'm laughing so hard because we see this in movies and we see this in children's stories, but rarely, if any other time, do we see God use an animal to speak for him. And can you just imagine your donkey that you've had, or horse or whatever that you've had all this time, and now it's talking to you? And so that's what happens. And then Balaam's eyes are opened, and he sees the angel of the Lord, which again, I think is Jesus, in the road. And he falls to his knees and he worships him immediately, which just adds to the intrigue about who Balaam really is. So he tells, the angel of the Lord tells Balaam that he cannot curse the Israelites. And in fact, he's going to end up blessing them when he gets there because of this conversation with the donkey. Jesus, but still, it just cracks me up. So he ends up blessing Israel 3 times through all of this. And of course, Balak gets madder and madder and just keeps asking, like he doesn't give up. The first time you might be mad and say, okay, go back and redo it. And you might think they would. By the 3rd time, I just don't think they would. But they do. So he does. And so Balaam continues to bless Israel. And actually the 3rd time that he blesses Israel, he prophesies about the Messiah. So again, another footprint of Jesus. Just in numbers. I mean, just in this story, we've seen at least 2. And he says in 24:17 through 19, I see him, but not now. I behold him, but not near. A star will come out of Jacob. A scepter will rise out of Israel. He will crush the foreheads of Moab, the skulls of all the people of Sheth. Edom will be conquered. Seir, his enemy, will be conquered, but Israel will grow strong. A ruler will come out of Jacob and destroy the survivors of the city. He's prophesying about Jesus. How absolutely cool is that? Now, we also know through this, and I think Balaam knows this, God made a promise to Abraham that he would curse anyone that showed contempt for or cursed his people. And so Balaam may know this, but regardless, it's the truth and they can't be cursed. And so that goes back to Genesis, in Genesis chapter, Genesis chapter 3, where God made that promise to Abraham. There is a whole lot more to this story about Balaam. And if you go on and read 25, he shows his true colors. And I recommend you read that because what he does in chapter 25 significantly changes things for the Israelites and their relationship with the Moabites and their relationship with God. But for our purposes, I have one more short story for you that I want to go backwards to chapter 21. Israel is on the edge of the promised land. God has brought them through 40 years, and here they are. So what do? Yep, they complain. And it's their favorite complaint. Why did you bring us out of Egypt to die? Now, mind you, this is a whole new generation. These were not the slaves in Egypt. They might have been children, but they were not slaves in Egypt. So here we are. And God has had it with them, and it just kind of reminds me of a father saying, I'll give you something to be worried about. And he gives them something to complain about, and it's poisonous snakes. So this brought about a confession pretty quickly out of them because they realize, okay, we have way overdone it this time. And God, in his mercy, tells Moses to make a serpent and put it up on a pole. And when they've been bitten by the snake, when they see that, they will recover. Now, I want you to think about this, because later in John, in chapter 3, Jesus says in chapter 3, verses 14 and 15, just as Moses lifted up the snake in the wilderness, so the Son of Man must be lifted up, that everyone who believes in him may have eternal life. So, isn't that beautiful? This depicts both the fall and the redemption. The serpent was part of the problem, certainly pride and other things, caused Eve to eat from the tree, and the serpent on the pole is offered as physical relief from death. Jesus, many generations later, is offered up on a pole that is a cross, so that everyone can have the choice of spiritual relief through him. Isn't that beautiful? The footsteps of Jesus in the Old Testament are amazing. And the stories are so much richer when we know that. So tomorrow we are going to talk about Deuteronomy, and that is Moses' final song as he encourages those going into the promised land, as he reminds them of what faith and obedience and trust will do for them, and when they don't obey, what happens to them. And he shows them amazing and beautiful love. And he, remember, doesn't get to enter the promised land. So we will dig into that a little bit tomorrow. Have a wonderful day.